Welcome to This Week in Habsland. I am Jordan and I'm joined by my co-host Brian. We are here each Monday to discuss all things Montreal Canadiens. Find us on social media at Blue Sky and TikTok at Habsland Pod. Now, Brian, I think you wanted to start us off maybe with a bit more of a zoomed out take on where the Canadiens are through 30 games. So why don't you jump into that? Tell us how you thought about how the week went, and then we'll get into maybe the most positive thing about the week after that, and then basically all downhill from then on.
Yes, Jordan, definitely more disappointments than positivity this week, I think. Going 1-2, and the only win coming in a shootout against the team that is you should be beating in regular time. I think you should be beating the Ducks in regular time. If you're the Canadiens right now, that was a shootout win, 3-2 against Anaheim, and then the debacle on Thursday night. So I want to say, though, before we get into the actual what happened in that awful game, we've played 30 games this season. So the Winnipeg game was actually the 30th game of the season. So before we get into the very, very positive element at the beginning of that 9-2 loss and then go through all the bad stuff in that 9-2 loss, I wanted to just look at what's happened so far in the Montreal Canadiens season after 30 games and compare that to the past several seasons. Because I think 30 games is a decent sample size. We often talk about how at the beginning of seasons, you can't base yourselves on a lot in terms of sample size. There just haven't been enough games yet. I think 30 games, that's where you're starting to be at, like, you know what, this is enough games that we could start actually talking about stuff. So where are the Canadiens this year after 30 games? 25 points, 11 wins, 3 losses in overtime. That's how they accumulated those 25 points. Jumble that with 16th in losses where you got nothing, and it's a pretty mediocre bottom of the league ranking. The past 2 seasons, we were exactly even at NHL 500, 30 points in 30 games, 13-13-4 last year, 14-14-2 the year prior, which I was kind of surprised by this for the year prior, because I remembered last year, no, they did have a decently strong start. The year before, I didn't remember them having such a strong start. And the year prior, an even stronger start. No, I'm just kidding. 6 wins, 3 overtime losses for 15 points. So just to put this in context, we're nowhere near that. So those who are freaking out right now because the Montreal Canadiens are sitting in the bottom few teams, you don't have to freak out that hard. This is not the 2021-2022 season where we had half as many points as games played 30 games in. We're 5 points back of the pace that we were at, last season and the year before, where we ended 5th from the bottom. So are we approaching another season like that? It sure looks like that right now. What do you think, first of all, just in terms of where we are in the standings, how many points we've acquired compared to the last few seasons?
I think we've clocked a couple times that they're not off to as good of a start as they have in the last 2 seasons. Now that we're 30 games in, it'll be interesting to see if you're graphing this over the season, at what point they cross over the 23 season, and if they ever cross over the 24 season. So again, it's a little surprising they're off to the weak start. You can kind of put that to 1 or 2 players maybe, but overall, we've looked at the numbers a bit deeper. Like they're along the same lines of where they were last year. But yeah, tracking it over the course of the year will be interesting to see at what point they cross over and say, oh, at this point 2 years ago, they're actually doing better now.
Right.
Not the case so far, but I would expect that to turn eventually, because they don't keep those point per game paces in either season.
No, they don't.
So
they don't. You're right about that implosion sort of in the middle of the season. So just looking forward, that's probably the time in which they're going to overtake.
Yeah.
The past couple years.
Right. Okay, then the other positive thing we wanted to get into before the headlines. We didn't give Lane Hutson a headline. Maybe we should have. We patted ourselves on the back last week for not talking about Lane. So it's almost like we have to talk about him immediately. He scored his first goal in the NHL on Saturday against Winnipeg. Like, I'm happy. It was an important goal, right? It was 1-0 goal on the road. Like, everyone, it was a goal with some weight to it. Man, he was happy. And not only that, like, I thought it was really indicative of how much everyone on the ice cared about it by the fact that, like, Matheson and Caulfield were almost fighting for who could get the puck out of the net for him faster. And then the bench celebrate. Like, everyone knew, like, this goal was coming. Like, we weren't worried that much about it. But it's good to kind of move on now from, like, not that it was never a distraction. This was never like a Josh Anderson goal drought from the beginning of last year type of distraction, because Lane Hutson's been so incredible this year. He now has 20 points in 30 games, 3rd on the team in scoring. Absolutely bonkers. But he broke the goose egg, and you love to see it.
Yeah, 100%. I have a question for you regarding that, Jordan. Will the Victor Mete comparisons stop now?
I think, yeah, they were stupid to start off with. I brought it up too. Like, they were ridiculous.
They were absurd. Yeah.
Lane Hutson's going to score somewhere between 3 and 6 goals this year, and that's fine. But like,
Yeah.
on Hutson's part, like, I think it's funny that, yeah, he might end the season with like 4 goals and 48 assists, and we're all going to look at each other and be like, I think he can do a bit better.
Yeah.
For a rookie, we're going to look around and be like, yeah, like, well, we can get the 70 points one year.
Yep.
Wild that he's at 2/3, right? So he's on pace for 50 something points at this point.
Yeah, 55, Jordan. He's on pace for exactly 55 right now. 3 of those would be goals. 52 of them would be assists. So that's a pretty good season of assisting there.
Yeah, there's very happy times. And what was a decent game, in all honesty, against the Winnipeg Jets. Jets had not been playing well, but when you have Connor Hellebuck in nets and you're at home, you stand a good chance at winning. Canadians put up a decent fight. I'm sure we'll get into the Winnipeg game a bit. Brian, I think that's enough positivity from the Hutson front.
So I want to say before we get to the next thing, it was Connor Hellebuck. He was at home. Like, and this shot was ripped. This shot was ripped. So like, there are those defensemen usually, but forwards even, who get their first goal and it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, it trickled in or something. No, this was a well thought out laser to the side of the net that Hellebuck was not stopping one of the top goalies in the NHL. So I do want to just say, like, no, this was real. This was real. So this is showing there are things to come. You said between 3 and 6. Maybe it will be more. Maybe he just needed to break the goose egg, and then every few games, because he's still shooting roughly once a game. Even there's definitely a lot of opportunities coming up for him to score more goals here, Jordan.
Yep. Okay. First headline, Brian. What's your top headline of the week?
Oh, here we go. So Jordan, my first headline. I'll get to it in just a sec. It's regarding the awfulness that was Thursday night, the loss to Pittsburgh. Before I get to the awfulness itself, I want to talk about the good part of that game, which was Nick Suzuki's goal. Oh my goodness, what a beauty. What an absolute beauty from Nick Suzuki. That goes in, and then the walls come down and everything falls apart. Embarrassing loss for the Montreal Canadiens. So here's my headline. Why do the Penguins just absolutely every single time we play them this year? Obviously we're bleeping what I just said. So here it goes for real. Why does a mediocre or like bad, let's just be real, bad Pittsburgh team just have our number this year? Why have they beaten the Canadiens on 3 occasions, scoring 18 and only conceding 6 Canadiens goals? That puts us at -12 in 3 games versus Pittsburgh.
And this is now 6 straight losses to the Penguins. After the Habs kind of had a good run on Pittsburgh in the year before that, where they swept them in their 3 games. I'm not quite sure what it is. Part of me thinks that the Canadiens see Pittsburgh as a bit of a volatile defensive team. And the Habs kind of think, ooh, like today can be a point night. Like today can be, or tonight, can be a game where it's a little bit looser. We can play a little bit more wide open hockey. And maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe the Pens are just ready for the Habs now. And that might be an element to it as well. I mean, we're going to get into the discipline that definitely didn't help in this most recent game. Like the Pens game also, it was 3-2 going into the third period. Like it was a close game. It was a game where you're looking at it, you're like, I feel like it can kind of be tied right now. And then that third period, I saw the stat. It's like the first time since like 1970 or something that the Canadiens gave up 6 goals at home in a period. It was honestly comical. Like it got to the point where it was like, how every single shot at one point seemed like it was going in, and there's a bit of a Primo thing in there. But like even before Primo gets there, it's 6-2. So even before him, there's a lot of defensive miscues. There's a lot of, I don't know. It's happened so many times this year. I thought we were past this. I thought we were in another like stage of the Habs season where we're not worrying about these lengthy blowouts where, and I know the Bruins game was it 6-2 or no, it was 5-1 at one point, finished 6-3, but that was more of like a specific Primo and I think Matheson issue. Whereas earlier in the season, it was just, everyone just kind of would let up once they went down by 3. And that kind of felt like it happened again this week. And that was the most concerning part, where it's almost like relapsing into your poor, not performance, because again, the first 2 periods I thought were quite decent, but it just they just let the doors get blown off and they just kind of like looked around and shrugged.
They just lost focus. They completely lost focus as the game started getting away from them, which at that point they were not realistically going to win, but they could have made it much less embarrassing for themselves. And that's really what's important here, because it's not the first time. This is the worst one, of the season at least. This is the worst one, but this is the fourth 4-goal or more blowout loss. So the first one was October 22nd, 7-2 against the Rangers. October 29th, a week later, 8-2 versus Seattle. Then Vegas beats us 6-2 near the end of November. And then this one. And I don't know if you're, as I'm recalling these, I don't know if you've noticed the biggest issue with these. All 4 of these games are at home. All 4 of these games are at the Bell Center, where you have the advantage. I mean, I know it's small in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's not like a 60-40 advantage. It's more, low 50s in terms of how many times the home team beats the away team, but it's not negligible. And for the fans and for the sort of morale of the squad, losing that bad at home is brutal. Those 4 losses account for -22. The team itself is -31.
Wow.
If those 4 games are 1-goal games, Jordan, the goal differential looks completely different. That's a -9, add 4, they'd be at -13.
So, Brian, what is it then? Like, from your vantage point, like, I'm having a tough time cracking down. It doesn't have to be specifically about the Pittsburgh game, but it feels like there's a lot more blowouts this year. Again, I like how if you separate it out, like you just said, the rest of the results kind of fall in line with a team that should be bottom 10 in the NHL. Those 4 games just crushed them down further into the basement.
They seem like the 70s Capitals, those 4 games.
So what is it? Like, why are there so many blowouts this year? And again, I thought we were done with them. You're right to point out the Vegas game, which has been more recent than the disasters early on in the season. And we're not including the Bruins game because that ended up being 6-3. But again, that was 5-1 at one point in the third period.
Yeah.
Why is there a greater volume of, in your opinion, blowouts this year?
It almost seems, just eye test wise.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you agree with this statement, but to me, it almost seems like there's this false sense of security with the Canadiens when they're at home. That we're at home, we have the crowd behind us, we have all the energy. Let's try and make a quick, interesting play from the defensive zone, and it's in the back of the net, giveaway. Or a lackadaisical coverage. And that happened a lot. And Pittsburgh in general, they're good at the down low stuff. And we saw that against Winnipeg too when they were on the power play. The down low stuff around the net, the seam pass that almost crosses the blue paint or does cross the blue paint. Like, the Habs have been shot in the foot by that several times, that lackadaisical coverage, and then also just flat out the giveaways. Like, Lane Hutson had one early, Letang, and that's a common thing, is a Habs defenseman making a mistake, and Letang, I remember last year, or the year before, and I think it was last year, that Matheson made that giveaway and Letang came back and scored, and then the opposite exact thing happened. Letang had a giveaway, Matheson scored, but it seems to be all Canadians now. Like, Letang's figured it out and we haven't. That's what it looks like, at least in terms of the giveaways.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to present my headline now because I think it does blend into it because we're talking about what's going on, what's the difference. This week specifically, so my headline is the lack of discipline. And specifically this week, like we have talked about, as I know we did at the quarter point, about, well, the penalty kill from a percentage standpoint is doing pretty well. Like it was whatever, 7th, 8th in the league. And then I brought in, again, the way I do it, which takes into account the frequency of penalties you take and the amount of shorthanded goals you score. And they dropped pretty considerably from something like 8th to 16th. And my worry was, well, they're just taking too many damn penalties. And eventually the penalty kill is going to, I think, fall down a few spots regardless. And then if you add the volume of penalties you take, it's just going to exacerbate the issue. This week was that. If I have it right, Anaheim went 1 for 3, Pittsburgh went 2 for 3, Winnipeg went 2 for 6. And that did it. That did it to them. The Winnipeg game specifically, like the 5-on-3. I mean, they got 2 power play goals. The first one I want to talk to you about in a moment, but the 5-on-3, where it was Dvorak and I forget who else was in the box. Honestly, like between Caulfield and Kirby Doc, and
it was probably Caulfield again. I think he got 2.
Yeah, so the 5 that killed them. I was watching the game, me and my dog, and I looked at Finley and said, "Hey, it's 2-1. It's a 5-on-3. If they don't kill this, we're done. It's over." And he agreed. No,
he agreed.
He was fast asleep. But that was it. 3-1. Like, good. Again, good hustle to make it back. Love the energy they brought in the third period, especially after the Anderson goal. But that essentially ended the game when it was 3-1. And the penalty kill has begun to slump. So in addition to taking tons of penalties, and I found this stat earlier this week on NHL.com, in terms of penalties taken per 60 minutes, the Canadiens are second in the NHL, only behind the Bruins.
Brutal.
So like I'm hoping this team is moving into a new phase of the season. And I think, again, the Pittsburgh game's a bit of a wacky one to keep in there. But now it's like, hey, can we focus on being disciplined? How about take half a penalty, one less penalty per game? And you will see like the strides that they've made at 5-on-5. If you're just going to negate that on the penalty kill, then what the hell are we doing?
The other thing that taking penalties always will affect is your 5-on-5 play after the penalty, because a lot of the players that are supposed to be warm are not warm anymore. And we've mentioned this before, that like young guys, especially Slavkovsky, Doc, when they're not in the game from the get-go a lot, they have trouble acclimating back into the game, to the pace of the game. And yes, that's on them to a certain extent, but with young players, you see that pretty often. So to give them the best chance to be in every single game and get their feet wet early, don't take early penalties either. And just try to be disciplined in general. Like, it could happen in the second period just as likely as the first. You take 2 early penalties in the second, suddenly your top 6 barely gets out there. It's always Jake Evans, Yoel Armia, who are doing a great job killing penalties. But especially if you're already down in the game, those are not the players you want getting the most ice time because you're taking penalties. You want your scorers out there, and they can't get acclimated because we're in the box too much. So that's definitely an issue. Another issue, though, Jordan, just to be straight up, like I talked about goal differential, we're minus 25 at 5-on-5. Yeah. So, like, yes, those, what is it, 6 then, if we're minus 31? So 6 goals against on the power play, or like while the Canadiens are killing penalties. That's very bad, but minus 25 is second worst in the league behind Nashville. So at 5-on-5, they're struggling as well. A lot of that is due, like we said, to the, oh my God, that can't be right. I just got completely distracted. Nashville has 38 goals for in 31 games. Is that right? That's insane. We have 53, so that's better. We just have a heck ton more goals against. Sorry, that just completely took me out. So a big part of the goal differential is still at 5-on-5, but the fact that we're taking all these penalties, we're getting scored on so much on the penalty kill, means that we're down in games, and then the players you need to get back in the games have not played enough to be warm.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. And I think it was the Utah game a few weeks back where we definitely pointed that out. Where I think it was 3 straight penalties in the first period, and that just kind of zapped the team. That was the game where they had 12 shots on goal, and you know, it's become a consistent pattern of penalties taking the team out of the game. And now that the penalty kill is falling a bit back down to earth, it's affecting them in an even more adverse way. So I wanted to ask you about the first Winnipeg goal, because I swear I watched this replay 12 times. If we're trying to paint a picture for people who might not remember. So Kyle Connor is in the, he's above the goal line, but he's off to the side on the left, like down from the half wall. Mike Matheson is in front of the Habs net. On the far side is Gabe Vilardi, who ends up scoring the goal. That's where the low pass you were talking about, the Habs didn't block. Now, Christian Dvorak is the high man here, and I forget who was at the bumper spot. It might have been Perfetti, might have been Scheifele. And it gets to the point where I couldn't figure out like who was at fault on that low pass goal. Is it, because I think what was happening was Matheson did not totally trust Dvorak was able to block the pass to the high slot. So Matheson moves his stick from blocking the low pass to blocking the pass into the slot. And the moment that happens, Connor recognizes it. Pass goes through. It's too fast for Montembeault to even think about stopping. So who's at fault there? Is it Dvorak for not being in a well enough position for Matheson to trust him to block that pass? Is it Matheson for at least maybe not putting his body? Although if Matheson moves his body lower, like to the ice to block the low pass, then the slot's wide open. I was having trouble figuring out like do you even put blame on anyone there and just say like that was a rocket of a pass too. No one was going to be able to stop it. What did you think about that play specifically?
I mean, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, because he's been my scapegoat a lot, the Dvorak being out of position is the first factor. And when I look at a play where something went wrong, if there's a domino effect where Matheson now has to cover 2 guys because of somebody else's lacking coverage, that isn't Matheson's fault. He's doing what he has to do in the moment to try and make up for somebody else's error. So it's obviously a team thing. It's everybody, but I think that one moment, and yes, it's Dvorak in this one moment, but he's not the only one who's been doing that either. Like we said before, the lapses in coverage have been pretty bad. But to me, it's often the guy who makes the first mistake that then causes all the other dominoes to collapse. Now, is that something that could be fixed with coaching, where people are going to make mistakes? That first error is going to happen. You can't avoid it in hockey. It's just the game's too fast. You're going to react to something poorly and then go, oh, shoot, that wasn't the play he was making. I just got deceived. And can the other players around the player who got deceived fix that error more quickly? I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know if that's the type of thing that can be fixed after an error is already made, especially a giveaway. Like to use the other example of the thing that's been happening a lot. Is that something that can be fixed by the next player? I'm not sure. So like when I say that this could be fixed by coaching, you have to almost make sure that first error occurs way less. That's really the only solution here. So I would put it on Dvorak in this one case. There have been other guys who have done it too, though. So to sort of not just get on his case all the time, there's other guys that have been doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's jump into a third headline here, and let's maybe take a step back from the Habs. We'll get back into them on part 2. The NHL Board of Governors meeting was this past week in Florida. They talked about a bunch of stuff, still thinking about shifting to 84 games, although that's very unofficial right now. The salary cap jumping $5 million. But there are two elements, and one is not directly something they spoke about, but was just a topic that was floating around all week. And then the other one is surrounding, I think they talked about more, it was the media deal. One is, I think hockey has been for a long time behind other sports leagues with how they leverage the media. You and I have spoken about this, like when things come out, why do they come out? Who do they benefit? I think the majority of sources in the NHL, whether you're talking about someone like Elliot Friedman or Pierre LeBrun or Darren Dreger or Chris Johnson, the vast majority of them are team-based sources. Players have been very hesitant, I think, to use the media in any type of public negotiation or anything. So I've been wondering more and more, like with Spitting Chicklets, with Paul Bissonnette, like this like non-traditional media that's coming out right now, are players starting to be able to leverage media more now with sources that they actually trust, not necessarily with LeBrun or with Dreger, but with, like Ryan Whitney and Paul Bissonnette. And I feel like, the whole Jeremy Swayman stuff is a great example of it, actually, where Swayman was using the media to negotiate for him. Now, the idiots in the front office in Boston were not doing themselves any favors, but Swayman was definitely doing negotiating through the media. The Trouba stuff going around, like you had guys like Aaron Ward coming to defense of Trouba about like how this is happening and what they're telling him to do. And like that is really Trouba leveraging like existing relationships with former players. And the Brady Tkachuk stuff, like I have no idea where the source of that rumor comes from, but it came from someone. And I think we're at the precipice of like players better understanding how to use media. And now that there's different types of NHL media and who they trust, like others, like the NBA is brutal with this, where like you can tell which media member, which has sources plugged into which players, because all the favorable coverage comes from those specific media members. I think the NHL landscape is turning into this, and it'll be really interesting to see which players and how players will use this new angle to negotiate for them in public, because you have the Rangers right now are actively shopping. Like it's Elliot Friedman on Saturday night was saying, yeah, they're still looking to trade Chris Kreider. Look, that is not the one player on this podcast we want to be defending, but I wonder now if Kreider will use some different form of media to fight back in some capacity. So this has just been something I've been tracking. What are your thoughts on just a bit of a shifting landscape in terms of NHL sources, in terms of we have different players in the game now?
I have a pretty positive view of this, Jordan. I see this kind of as a look back at when NHL players fought for the right to know what they all made in terms of salary a few decades ago. This is a very similar thing where this big bargaining chip being the ability to utilize these different types of media to get more fair contracts, more fair deals, to be moved to the team that you want to get to, that type of thing. I think there's definitely positives in it, because when I look at these negotiations, I always see it from the side of the players. I always care more if it's affecting the players positively. I'd rather the owners, who already make millions, billions sometimes, suffer rather than the players. Like the on ice product is what you want to keep. That's the pinnacle. That's the most important thing, right? Like c'est primordial. That's the most important thing is keeping the on ice product as good as you possibly can and treating the players well. So if they're getting this extra bargaining chip and being able to utilize the media in this way, that's great. Because guess who's been utilizing the media in the other way the entire time that the NHL has existed? Well, maybe not in the 20s, but like you get the idea, right? Like for the past several decades, the media has been controlled by the owners. Now, finally, it's twisting around and the players are getting this big bargaining chip. So I think it's great. I think that there can and will be ways in which the players use it to a detriment, where like maybe they'll really try and take advantage of the team that they're currently on and ask for a switch and just completely remove the leverage from that team. But if the team put themselves there in the first place, that's an issue. This isn't I was going to say this isn't an Eric Lindros thing, but he did hate the Quebec City owner. But as long as it doesn't get to that point where a player who's never even set foot on the ice for their team, who just gets drafted, wants to leave immediately, I think it's okay. I think that players should have a little bit more say on where they end up playing. I do hope they do it in the proper way, but if there's no means to do it in the proper way, what other choice do they have? They could do it this way, and the owners have been doing that forever. So you know what? Even the playing field. I like this. I like this a lot.
Yeah, you can talk about like player empowerment and like we've seen it with NCAA players, right, who force their way out of teams that they were drafted of. I do wonder if that's going to become more and more public as the years go on. We saw it a little bit last year with Rucker McGorty, right, in terms of what they were leaking to the media. And like now he's totally fine being in the AHL. He just hated being in the Winnipeg franchise, right? So that's another one where it's like, yeah, how is it being used? Who is using it?
Either that or he just can't do that twice. He does that twice, he becomes like a Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's like this. Nobody wants to take a chance on him because he keeps not performing for the team he's on. Or
Adam Fox did it twice, and we're all fine with it, I guess. So it's all right.
Yeah, I get. Adam Fox is in terms of offensive D, he's a top end guy. So maybe that's the thing too. But he also made it known pretty much right from the beginning. Like I want to play for New York. So
yeah, we're not going to get into that
elsewhere.
Yeah, let's not get into that today because that's a whole other can of worms. The other thing I wanted to touch on briefly in relation to, and there was no real reporting about this after the governor's meeting ended, but what the new Canadian NHL media deal will look like. So the 12-year Rogers deal ends at the end of next season, so at the end of the 25-26 season. We're just in an interesting moment in Canadian media and Canadian like sports media where Rogers is finishing this behemoth of a 12-year deal, but this year and for next year also, they've sold off their Monday night package to Amazon, and everyone has been thumbs up so far on Amazon. Bell and to an extension TSN are looking weaker than they ever have been for a variety of reasons, but Bell is seeming to be less and less of a player in live media, live sports these days. And then the other component is, and we've talked about the digital streaming services, they have all been stepping up to the plate. Amazon being huge in the NFL and the NBA, now stepping into hockey. You have Netflix with the NFL. You have MLB with Apple. You also have MLS, of course, that has all of their stuff on Apple. I wonder what's going to happen. And that's why I thought it was kind of interesting when Rogers opened the door to Amazon to sub-license essentially their Monday Night Hockey. Amazon might become the main player in Canadian sports live TV rights in the next year and a half or two. And I wonder, like the NHL obviously wants that. They want to split their package up. They want competition. I wonder if a Rogers Amazon in the future, like right now it's just Monday nights go to Amazon, Wednesdays and Saturdays are going to Sportsnet. I wonder if that shifts a little bit in the future. And I think TSN might be done from a national standpoint. I don't know what that means regionally. I think a lot of us would like to see the regional packages killed entirely so we can all have one package and watch all the games, but that's seemingly never going to happen. So, Brian, what do you think about that? Like it's TSN, growing up, TSN was the place for hockey. They've taken a step back in the past decade. Sportsnet and Rogers have jumped to the forefront. And now as Rogers is starting to wobble a bit, Amazon is coming into play. How do you feel about an increased presence of streamers in hockey?
I just think it's unavoidable. Like every other sort of medium went this way.
Yeah.
When you look at radio becoming podcasts, and when you look at television shows being on at a specific time versus, often binging them on, you name it, one of the dozen popular stream websites that exist. Like everything's going in this direction. So if it's going to go in this direction, all I want is that the quality of the product is good. And with Amazon, it seems to be. I had my doubts, but they seem to be doing things in the right way. Some of the angles that they get, I think you drew our attention to this a few weeks ago, and I've been really looking for that in the few games that I've seen on the Amazon service. You're absolutely right. Like some of the angles that they're getting, the camera angles, and being able to flip to them really quickly, the quality of their like decision making in terms of what angle to watch, the quality of the angles themselves is really great. The people that they have talking about the game seem to really know their stuff. So as long as the product is good, I'm happy. And as long as it's accessible to everybody, because the blackout thing, I'm hoping they're realizing is a thing of the past. Like it's been silly for a long time to black out complete areas from watching certain games. Like just can we all just see all the games, please? Even if it costs, and it wouldn't cost that much more, I don't think. Like in terms of from the owner's perspective, in terms of growing the game, if you want to look at this long term, and we're going to get really meta here for like 30 seconds, but if you're trying to grow the game, which is what they say perpetually that they're trying to do, why limit who can see what hockey games? Why not just let everybody see whatever hockey game that they want? Bite the bullet now, like bite the extra cost now, and then later you're going to get so many more eyeballs on the screens because everybody can watch the team that they love from no matter where they are in the country. I just think that that's obvious, and maybe I'm...
Yeah, no, look, I understand it, and I don't think we should dive into this too deep right now, because I think this deserves a full like half an hour to itself. The last thing I'll say about it is I've been asking the question in my head, and I know at the end of the day, they don't care, but I would still like someone to ask, whether it's Jeff Molson or Michael Andlauer or any of these owners, do you feel a responsibility to make the game affordable and accessible? Because we're seeing the NHL approach $7 billion in revenue, and it's being championed by a lot of media as like, wow, this is great for hockey. Sure, in terms of from a business standpoint, but why do you think those numbers are going up? It's been the same number of seats are being sold. So you're just increasing the price of the seats. I wonder, I would like someone to ask, like Jeff Molson, do you feel a responsibility to make your tickets affordable for people to go to? Again, that's just been in my head for the past few weeks. And now like when they're talking about like, oh, the new deal and the cap's going to go up, like I have less and less empathy with the players. I have no empathy with the owners, but I have less and less empathy with the players as the years go on. And hockey's by far and away not the worst of this. You have basketball players and football players making $50-60 million a year. I have a hard time empathizing with you when you complain about your collective bargaining. Hockey's getting to that point too, where they're going to be $100 million on American on a salary cap, and I'm going to be here like, why are we championing like record revenue when it's like, what's because you're price gouging your fans, and that comes through regional blackouts. To your point, it comes that way. You have to buy the national package, which is still junk, by the way, because if you have like for Canadiens fans, everything goes through TSN, but if you have like TSN Go or whatever, you cannot watch an on-demand Montreal Canadiens game. So you either have to watch it live or you have to wait the 2-day blackout period to watch it on whatever NHL on demand, whatever it's called. So that's a broken system, but they don't care because then they make you buy the local package. They make you get the regional, the national package. If you're going to games are more and more expensive every year. I would love to ask that question. Do you feel a responsibility to make the game affordable and accessible? I know the answer is, well, the true answer is no, I could give less of a crap. They would say some nonsense about affordable tickets and blah, blah, blah. It's not the truth. That's something I've been struggling with, and I think that was part of this conversation here.
I love it when we say a few times during a conversation, okay, we don't have time to get into this, so let's just jump. And then we ended up talking about it for 10 minutes. Yeah. But I think it's a very important conversation, so I'm very happy that you're bringing it up. The affordability of tickets, like, dream on, basically. Yeah, it's really sad, but I think, at least in our case in Montreal, the Bell Center is going to be sold out no matter how expensive the tickets are. So until they have trouble selling out, they're not going to make that adjustment. Yep. You know, that's for markets that have trouble selling out. So it's a shame, but it is what it is.
Now, speaking about empathy for players, let's get them a bunch of gifts for the holidays. So part 2 of the episode, we've done this every year so far. It's a segment we love. It's our holiday shopping wish list for Montreal Canadiens players. This can be something very literal, like if Lane hadn't scored yet, a goal for Lane Hutson. This has also been some very silly stuff in the years past. I believe one year I gave Evgeny Dodonov the Mighty Ducks movies.
Because he just needed to find love for hockey
Yeah,
again.
it was that. Yeah. I think Kirby Dach got a VR headset at one point when he was injured. Like it can be wacky, ridiculous stuff. It can be very literal stuff, like good health for David Reinbacher. So I'll be honest, this year, Brian, all stupid ones for me. So I know you got a handful as well. I think I have a few more than you did from what I recall. So I'll jump into it right away. And I think this is someone you also got a gift for. So I'm going with Kirby Dach first. I'm getting Kirby Dach a game of Snakes and Ladders.
Okay.
I hope this teaches him a lesson in ups and downs and the randomness of sport and competition. Kirby Dach, I mean, you can also have said this about Juraj Slafkovsky, but like Kirby Dach he is certainly struggling with confidence this year. There are moments like when his most recent goal, like that's luck. That's when you land on the ladder and you go up 2-3 levels. And every now and then something unlucky will happen to you. You might fall down a little bit. Get him some Snakes and Ladders. Understand the randomness of it, but there's still a perpetual motion forward. It is not necessarily about linear progression, but progression in some sense. So I hope he enjoys it. I will get Kirby Dach Snakes and Ladders.
I love that, Jordan. I also got, so you're right, I got Dach a gift as well. I also got him a game. I got him a game to share with Newhook and Evans, two other centers. I got them Hungry Hippos because I think that it reflects proper face-off winning technique.
Right. Okay.
It's kind of a gag gift, but I think Hungry Hippos would benefit the three guys who are sitting under 50%. So Nick Suzuki, 50.1% face-off. Dvorak, 55.5%. So, all right, 30 games in, sample size. I'm starting to see why Dvorak takes important face-offs. Okay, fine. But Jake Evans, 47.2. Newhook, 44.9. Not terrible. Kirby Dach, 38.1. So that needs to definitely improve. I'm happy about Newhook's, actually, sitting at about 45%. That's better than I was seeing going in. So left-handed center of the future, maybe not, but we shall see. So Hungry Hippos, Snakes and Ladders, some nice game gifts. Very, very nice, Jordan.
Yeah, I have one more game one, and maybe I'll get into that right away. This is I struggled. I wanted to get this for two guys. I'm trying to figure out the pairings, just like Martin St. Louis. I'm struggling. So I landed on Caden Gooley and David Reinbacher. I'm going to get them Overcooked, which is a very popular game, online game. Primarily, I've played it on the Nintendo Switch. It is a game where it's just the dumbest game in the world, but you essentially prepare food in a kitchen and there's all sorts of shenanigans that go on. But importantly, it is a 2-player game and you need to be in line with your partner when you are playing this game. You have to be communicating. You have to be talking constantly. You have to be organized in terms of, I'm going to go here, you're going to go there, you're going to go chop the onion, I'm going to go get the dirty dishes, I'm going to clean the dish. When you come back, the onion's going to be in the stove will cook. Make sure it doesn't catch on fire. And then sometimes, anyways, let's work on, because St. Louis has just been meshing these pairings up like no tomorrow. Every game, it seems like the defensive duo, and I don't blame St. Louis because there's just not enough righties, and Savard's now hurt, and things are just kind of moving around. So yes, this could have in theory been Gooley and Hutson. Maybe Hutson should be the third guy here, but that doesn't help my idea of developing chemistry. But I was thinking this is still the first pairing of the future. And David Reinbacher, unfortunately, cannot be playing hockey this season. At least we don't expect him to play any meaningful hockey this year. Maybe he's skating by February or March, but I don't think we'd expect him to actually suit up. Let's get him and Gooley talking. Let's get those guys communicating and working together and collaborating in some capacity so that when they get on the ice in training camp in September next year, they are a leg up from where we might have expected them to be. What do you think about that?
I love that one. I think definitely needs that. And I'll have to try that game.
It's phenomenal.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Well, it's phenomenal unless there are times where you want to throw your remote at people.
At the person you're playing with.
Yeah. Or just you and I will play. We will come back to the podcast, and I have it right here behind me. We'll play.
I'll have a bruise on my forehead.
Yes. Yeah. That'll be the week that I record by myself. Okay. What do you got? What else do you got?
Very nice. Where do I want to go here? I got a lot left. I think I want to re-gift something.
Oh.
I think I want to re-gift something. And this is actually for an ex-Montreal Canadiens player. So for the context here, so Jordan and his wife, when my little baby daughter was born in March, got us a really sweet gift. We had asked for everybody, instead of cards, to give us like a book for a baby and then sign their name in the book. And that way they have it forever. And, you know, and he and a couple other people actually got us.
I know where this is going. This is great.
The hockey sweater.
Yeah.
Got us the hockey sweater, which is a lovely book. I hadn't read it since I was a little kid, and I got it. I was like, oh, sweet, a heartfelt story about, you know, no matter what jersey you wear, you can always come out to the rink. And then I read it.
It's vicious.
It's vicious. Roch Carrier, my God, man. No, if you're not a Habs fan, get the off of the rink. You're not wearing that Toronto Maple Leafs jersey here.
Brutal. Just brutal. Storytelling. Honestly, me too. I thought the story at the end of the day is, don't worry, we can all be friends. It is not. It's not. Go hate your life. You're not a Habs fan.
and fair enough, and that's the way it should be. But no, I'm getting that book from Max Pacioretty.
Of course, yes.
So Max Pacioretty, you're getting the hockey sweater this year. Know what it means to wear. Maybe it might be the second coolest jersey in all of hockey, but it is not Les Glorieux, Les Canadiens de Montréal. So Patches, you're getting the hockey sweater by Roch Carrier. Sorry to regift that, but actually, you know what? I'm not going to regift it. You wrote a very sweet note to my daughter in there. I'm going to get him a brand new one.
There you go.
With a less sweet note written in it.
That's great. Oh, that is a phenomenal. That might be one of the best gifts we've ever given out on this show. Next up, Juraj Slafkovsky. This is a weird one. I'm least confident in this one. I hope he likes it. I'm getting him rollerblades.
Okay. All right.
Why
rollerblades?
We gotta work on Slav. He has to stay moving. You got to work on keeping those feet moving at all times, you know, off the ice, on the ice, always be moving. We've been a little stagnant this year. He's been a little over reliant on his reach. And I think we just got to get Slav in the mindset to be perpetually in motion. So on the ice, he has his skates. He can do wonderful stuff. The moment he gets off the ice, we'll let him in the dressing room. You know what? He can, you know, we put some flip-flops, some slides on. The moment and maybe with the winter, it might be a bit difficult with the ice. But hey, you're on a road trip. They're going to be in Florida right around the holidays. Rollerblades. The moment you're at the rollerblades, like, let's work on just keeping things moving. Always be in motion, in flow. That's what I'll get Juraj Slafkovsky for Christmas this year.
I think that's very nice, Jordan. It's something he definitely needs. When he's stationary, he is about 1/10 as effective as he is when he's moving. So yep. I think that's a great gift. I'm going to add on to that. Juraj Slafkovsky needs some positivity this year in his Christmas. So he's in Montreal. He's away from his family. He's probably getting a little bit sad. I got him what I'm calling my nostalgia mixtape. So I made him a mixtape. It's got like the Beatles in My Life on it, Sound of Silence from Simon and Garfunkel, Linkin Park's In the End. And it's just to remind him of last season, of the end of last season when he was producing a lot. He got put back on the top line with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield for this 30th game against the Jets in Winnipeg. So hopefully he stays there. I think it's a recipe for success for this team. I think the speed also that Newhook added to the second line with Doc and Line A is going to be helpful for them. It's going to be effective. It balances out the height thing, like I said last week. So I'm thrilled about this change, but Uri needs to remember what it was like to play with these guys last year when he got up to 50 points in the 82 game season. And a lot of that came in the back half of the year. So, but one caveat. So it's a nostalgia mixtape, but to end the mixtape, the last song is Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast, because it's really time for Uri to unleash the beast. He's got it in him. We see it in flashes. And as soon as he does, he'll be just an absolutely revolutionary player for this team. So I'm getting that for Uri.
Very much like last season, Juraj Slafkovsky is quite possibly the most important player to watch in the second half of the year. I know we're not there yet, but as the calendar turns into 2025, just like it did in 2024, Slav is the most important guy to watch because, again, it's a check mark on Nick Suzuki again. Cole Caulfield, by the way, remember my stupid prediction at the beginning of the year that he would lead the team in assists? I know that's not going to happen because Lane and Suzuki,
close though, eh?
Suzuki and Hutson are running away with it. But after a very quiet start, Cole Caulfield, I believe, is only 4 assists behind third place, which I think is Slav or Matheson. It's one of those two. He is tied for 5th now. He's coming up the ranks. So it's a check mark on Caulfield's season. That's great. Lane Hutson, it's like triple check marks. Well done. The guy that we are still asking some questions about is Juraj Slafkovsky. His back half of the season might be the most important. Okay, next up, you already got him a group gift for Hungry Hungry Hippos. This one is both literal and figurative. Getting some apples for Alex Newhook.
Okay.
Nutritious. It's not the time of the year, unfortunately. Fall is obviously best time of the year to get some apples. But I'm sure we can get some imported. Also, apples. The man has yet to pick up an assist this year. People are starting to point it out. Look, in his career, he has 58 assists, 48 goals. So, and last year, 15 and 19. The year before that, 14 and 16. His first season, his rookie season, 13 and 20. It's not like he doesn't pick up assists. I just think it's really weird. We're 30 games in. He has no apples. Get him some in real life, and maybe that'll inspire him to get some on the ice.
Great gift. Great gift. Look, he's playing now with Line, at least this past game he is. Then again, he was playing with Caulfield and Suzuki before, so that should have been an opportunity to get some apples for two guys who have a bunch of goals, 28 between them. But now he's playing with Line. He's playing with Doc. Hopefully those two can pick up some goals. Hopefully he can get some apples too. I like that gift a lot.
Okay.
Very nice.
What do you have next?
I actually got two things for the entire Montreal Canadiens team. The first one, Breakaways for Dummies. The book, because, and this one occurred to me 3 minutes into the game versus the Penguins when Dvorak just backhanded the most meek little shot into the crest of Tristan Jarry. And I was like, this is the ninth. I looked it up after. This was the ninth straight breakaway that the Canadiens had failed to score on. So they need to read Breakaways for Dummies. The other thing that I got the entire team is a boombox that only plays LMFAO and Lil Jon's shots. You know, shots. Habs are last in the NHL with 728 shots on goal. They've put on 30 or less every single game, and they're averaging about 24 and a quarter, which is also last behind the Red Wings, who are at more like 25 and a quarter. So the Habs need to take more shots. I'm dying to see a game in which the Montreal Canadiens take more than 30 shots. Hasn't happened yet. It should very well happen in the future. So what do you think of those two gifts? The boombox playing Lil Jon and LMFAO's shots and Breakaways for Dummies.
So on the shots component, this was Sportsnet put this tweet out after the Winnipeg game on Saturday. The Canadiens have now gone 29 straight games without recording 30 shots or more. That is too shy of a single season record. So who said records aren't going to be broken this year by this Montreal Canadiens team? Fully agree with that. On the breakaway stuff, okay, I hear you. However, we all have to mention the shootout on Monday night against Anaheim, where, first of all, the fact that the three guys in the shootout now is Caulfield, Line, and Suzuki is your third.
That's dangerous.
Just like, okay, we have something. Again, this is the part of like the talent is forming. We do have to mention that, but I fully agree with you. They still need a crash course on it because it's costing them some games. It's costing them some goals. It's costing them some games and some breathing room in some of these games as well. So fully endorse that. I have two more left, Brian. First
same.
one to our Russian phenom, Ivan Demidov. In 2009, the Canadiens were doing their centennial season. They released a 10-game box set and DVDs of the 10 best Montreal Canadiens games. I mean, at least those that were televised. I want to get that for Ivan Demidov. Let him start downloading some of the history of the Montreal Canadiens. So included in these 10 games, and I would say, like, I don't agree with all of them, but the 93 final is in there. The 1975 game against the Red Army on New Year's Eve, that's the one where Tretiak, like the Canadiens outscore or outshoot them something like 36-15. Tretiak stands on his head. It's a 3-3 tie. 1960 final against Toronto is in there. There's a Nordiques game in the 80s. There's a closeout game against Calgary that wins the cup in 86. There is the 2003 Heritage Classic, which is like fine, but it's a cool like Canadian hockey moment. The one I disagree with is the 2008 comeback against the Rangers. It's the 5-0 comeback. It's a regular season game. I don't care how much of a comeback it was. That was very much recency bias. If I could make a small adjustment, I would swap that out with Game 6 against the Vegas Golden Knights in 2021.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sure, you want a recent one. That's a great recent
It's
one.
not a final, but hey, and it's unfortunately the Bell Center is not full, but if they can show that image on Saint Jean-Baptiste of the Lehkonen OT winner and the crowd outside the Bell Center going bonkers to him, that just shows them a little bit of like recent, playoff heroics in Montreal, because you really want to show like how much like history there is, and that's why like there's a Leafs game in there's a Nordiques game in there, whatever, like that unfortunately doesn't matter. There's Bruins games in there, there's Rangers games in there, but you also want to show them the recent stuff about like playoff heroics and how much they will love you if you're awesome in the playoffs. So I'm getting that for Ivan Demidov. What do you think about it?
I love that. I think that could be extended to a bunch of Montreal Canadiens, but I think he needs it most. I think he needs the boost. Also, that'll be a nice way to be like, hey, don't worry, buddy. You're coming to a team that that's going to appreciate you and love you the way that the fans do in these games. Very, very nice. And he'll have a great opportunity to watch it, Jordan, because one of my last two gifts is also for Ivan Demidov. I've been working on this for months now. It's taken me forever. Using some of Einstein's physics, I've developed a way to produce a rocket ship that travels close to the speed of light. And if Ivan Demidov gets in this rocket ship and flies around the Earth maybe 5-10 times, a good 20 minutes, a lot more time will pass on Earth because of special relativity. And so this will mean that he will skip the remainder of his season. It'll only feel like maybe a few hours for him to watch all of the games that you're giving him. It'll feel like a few hours, but he'll skip his whole season with SKA, and then it'll be the off season with the Montreal Canadiens. So
I can't wait.
Oh, man.
I can't wait. It's a bit of torture right now seeing him just get glued to the bench. I think it's a quasi-international Russia-Belarus thing going on right now that he's taking part in. It's whatever. I can't wait till he gets to come over and we get to experience him more wholly next year. I did not get this gift from Michael Hage because I'm sure Hage knows all these games already. So I didn't have to worry about Michael Hage. Jacob Fowler, we could probably give him some price games. 2005, my favorite price game, which is 2015, Game 6 against Ottawa. Just make him watch that and be like, do that. Can you do that for like 12 years? That'd be great. My last one, and this is interesting. I want to give Mike Matheson the key to the city.
Ooh.
So it's only his third season, but you know what hit me? And I don't remember anyone bringing this up. I apologize if this was a discussion point when it actually happened. Mike Matheson, when he became the alternate captain, Brian, when was the last, I just thought about it this week, but when was the last time a Québécois wore an A or a C on the Montreal Canadiens?
So a Québécois, not just a Montreal-born player, but a Québécois.
Yeah, I'm letting you have anyone from Quebec. Now, and I also I'm not including that random time that someone wore it in the preseason because 7 other guys were out. None of that. A real alternate. Right. Start thinking, right? So Weber, no. Pacioretty, no. Giunta, Plekanec, Markov, Subban, Gallagher, Byron, Edmondson,
Georges,
Sheldon Surrey. Nope, Sheldon Surrey's from Alberta. There's Mike Komisarek.
Yeah, no, I just meant, did he wear a letter? He did wear a letter.
He did, yeah.
Your memory is so much better. You've named about 20 and I'm still struggling. Oh, Craig Rivet.
Yeah.
He has kind of a Quebec-sounding name, but he's not Quebecois, so that
no.
won't count. Kovalev. Is it? Oh, dude, we talked about him recently. It's got to be Patrice Brisebois.
It is Breezer in 2003.
Oh, my God. Wow. 20 years. Insane.
First of all, it's amazing that it's Brisebois, and we just brought up the Brisebois-Matheson connection 3 weeks ago.
Weird.
So Brisebois had it for a couple seasons, and then the other guy before that would have been Donfus as captain in the mid-90s.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Those are the last two I could personally find. At least, again, excluding probably the one time Jonathan Drouin was an assistant in a preseason game or whatever weird, but a real proper this is the guy. Brisebois in 02 and in 03. I think it was for 2 seasons, and then before that we have to go to the mid 90s with Donfus. I always want to look. There will become a time where Mike Matheson won't be on the Habs anymore and people are going to celebrate it. He gets traded, whatever. I have been on this podcast for 3 seasons now saying, enjoy this moment. You have a Quebec-born, you have a Montreal-born player on the Habs giving it his all every night. Is he perfect? No. Is he an all-star? No. But he's ours. He's really good, and we should be championing him a hell of a lot more than we tend to. He has become a bit of a scapegoat this year. I think it's cooled off a bit, especially since the power play flip happened. So I just wanted to point that out. Hey, it's been 20 years since a Québécois was an alternate or a captain, and Mike Matheson, key to the city, why not? I think he's going to continue to be underappreciated, and we know why, but he's going to continue to be underappreciated as a Quebec-born Montreal Canadian until he leaves. So I just wanted to shine one more light on Mike Matheson.
Love that, Jordan. I almost don't want to go into my last one now because that's such a nice bow to tie on this gift wrapping ceremony, let's say.
Yeah.
But I think I have to.
Oh, yeah,
I want to give this okay, so this one's half good and half bad. I want to get Montembeault dinner with Carrie.
Okay.
And specifically, because different players, obviously. I'm not comparing the two. Carey's an absolute legend. Carey Price is like the godsend of this team for the past 30 years. But I want him to talk to Monty about how to play 60 games because here's the other half to this gift. I'm getting Primo a very comfortable pillow to sit on as he's the backup because it's becoming very clear now. Monty's the starter, and he's not only the starter, he's the 60-game starter the way that Carey used to. So I want Carey to tell him how to do it. How do you last that long in a season? Like, gone are the days of Brodeur playing close to 70 every year. Now teams do much more of a 1A, 1B thing most of the time, like 50-30 split, that type of thing. But Monty's on pace. If this continues, he's started, like not counting the game he got pulled, but he's started, 8 of the last 10, something like that, somewhere in that realm. So that's definitely on pace for 60 games for the rest of the year. So I think he's got to learn how to do that. That type of durability is really difficult. So sorry to do you like that, Caden. Maybe there's still some good NHL level hockey left in you. We haven't seen it yet thus far. So maybe this can also be a fire lit under you to sort of take back that backup role for yourself.
I mean, look, Montembeault started the last 6 games since the Boston debacle for Primo. Primo's played once since then in relief. In the Pittsburgh game, and we spoke about that, he was not very good. And as a backup goalie, you need to be ready when your number gets called, and he wasn't. Also, some back support. I still don't understand why these poor goaltenders don't have back support when they're sitting on the bench, especially at home. Like, don't you want to be investing in your players? Like, yeah, I understand, like, the bench, too, like, those guys not getting back support. I still find it a bit weird for, like, Mike Matheson, if he's on the bench, to like not have just something to lean on a bit, but whatever, who cares? And it can be like a park bench, so the coaches can still put their foot up and feel important, but like a little bit of back support. But for the goaltenders that are there 2.5, 3 hours, I can't sit on a stool for more than 15 minutes without my back getting sore. I have no idea how these goalies do it without like proper cushioned seating.
I mean, you're an engineer. These guys are athletes. Like, there's a difference in terms of physical abilities there, too.
Well, I mean, still, like we gotta get a curved spine here just because Caden Primo is going to ride the bench for the next 45 games.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a very good point. I did start this whole thing off saying I'd get him a pillow, so I get where you're coming from.
Fair enough. I think if we could also maybe squeeze Jacob Fowler into that dinner invite, might as well.
Yes, that's a very good idea. Maybe get Volok in there with a translator, but yeah, Fowler in the future, 60 games for the Canadiens club. That sounds good to me.
Let's hear that. All right. So those are our holiday gifts for the Montreal Canadiens, current, past, and present, apparently. Hopefully it's that time of the year. Hopefully the Canadiens give us some positivity, some reciprocal gifts in the next week or so. Especially as that schedule turns real soon. This is the last real fun week we have before pure chaos.
Atlantic rivals, if you want to call them that. We're playing Buffalo on Tuesday at home. Then we go to Detroit and come back to play Detroit on Friday and Saturday. So a nice home and home back-to-back with Detroit. And the Tuesday game versus Buffalo, that's gonna right the ship for somebody. One of those two teams will be very happy to be playing the other Atlantic stinker because Buffalo's struggling, Montreal's struggling. Both teams need a win. So that'll be actually a good spirited battle, and Detroit's not doing much better. So maybe all 3 tilts this week will be close. Hopefully no blowouts, unless the high score is for the Montreal Canadiens. And those of you listening thinking, hey, you're doing your holiday wish list now, but next Monday is still before Christmas. Don't worry, we will be here next Monday, December the 23rd, to do another episode. But like all of you, we did our Christmas shopping early, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not true at all because my Christmas shopping has yet to be completed in my actual life. I had a fun time getting gifts for like 20 players, but my actual gifts are going to be during the rush of next weekend, I think, unfortunately.
Big time.
So best of luck to all of you doing your last-minute Christmas shopping or holiday shopping. Hanukkah lands on the same day as Christmas this year, all the other events that could be going on. So best of luck with your holiday shopping. And best of luck to the Canadiens who desperately need some wins right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back next week. Maybe a bit more of a reflective episode. Maybe not necessarily a Festivus, but something along those lines. I think we'll keep the holiday spirit going, but we'll have a bit of a reflective moment on the episode next week. And until then, you can follow us on social media at HabslandPod on Blue Sky and TikTok. If you like what you heard, feel free to leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And until next Monday, go Habs.